You'll figure it out.
Yo, welcome back to the Awtsmoos podcast. And here with our co-host.
What's up, Yakov?
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Good to have you back, and good to be back.
Been a few months.
Yes, it has been many months.
Nice.
So, yeah, tell me how does it feel to be back?
Lebedik. No, it's nice to be back. Honestly, took a week or two to adjust, but it feels at home here. And I think the key is you got to learn some of the Rebbe's Chassidus in 770, and then it makes sense. Until then, you kind of just feel like this is not the place to be. But once you do that, then I think what's special about here really just starts to shine. So now that we did that, I feel bad. I feel better. I feel good to be back.
Wait, so what did we do? You're telling me that we learned some Chassidus in 770?
Yeah, we got to learn some Chassidus together in 770. And what I was saying is that I think when you get to learn Chassidus in 770, especially the Rebbe's Maimorim, then it makes 770 make sense.
What was that word you used? Mamor? What is that?
We're doing this. We have to decide who our audience is. Is our audience the few people that know us and the random people that stumble on the clip? Or is it completely secular, non-Jewish audience? Who are we going for here?
The audience is not only anything that moves, but anything in general. Because when Mashiach comes, even inanimate matter will know the Creator. So not only is our audience all humans, but it's also, and not only is it all living creatures, including animals and angels, but it's also all matter and even antimatter.
Wow. That's very cool. I got to learn a few ideas over the past few months about angels listening to Divrei Torah. So that much I resonate with you on. But the other parts, and whatever we record and put on the internet is probably going to be there forever. And it's going to be used, and some AI is going to watch it. Oh, you don't think so? Okay, but
I mean, forever, yeah. I mean, forever could mean a lot of things. Yeah, it could be.
Okay, whatever our current concept of forever is.
Yeah.
That's, I think, the general idea is that whatever you put on the internet is forever, and the AIs are going to watch it. So I hear what you're saying.
At least someone is watching it.
Yeah.
What did you remember learning about the angels listening towards the Torah?
Well, there was a few ideas. One is there's this idea that the tzaddikim in Shemayim listen.
What is Shemayim again? Maybe good for
what
English.
Are tzaddikim?
Exactly.
The righteous people in heaven listen listen to the Torah that's being spoken by other people. I'm not sure if it's once they enter heaven themselves, how exactly it works, because there's also the simple interpretation and the more esoteric interpretation.
What are those two interpretations? Do you know or no?
Yeah, the simple interpretation is that there's the righteous, when they die, go up to heaven, and they're waiting for the other righteous to die and go up to heaven and join them. And then when the new righteous people die and go up to heaven, they share Torah, and it's like new Torah for the ones that were already dead.
And the angels that are also in heaven are just like eavesdropping?
Something like that. I don't remember exactly how they connect, but I know it's in some of the Chabad Rebbe's teachings as well.
Interesting. So that was a deeper meaning? That was a simple meaning?
That's the simple meaning.
Oh, okay. What's this deeper
meaning? The deeper meaning, again, it's up for interpretation, but there's this idea that is sort of a secret, but it's also seems to be the pshat, seems to be the actual understanding of it, which is that there's a state of mind called heaven. And in order to get there, a person goes through hell and goes through all these different various journeys of the soul that are described in various Kabbalistic works about the journeys of the soul, the Gilgulim, the reincarnations, etc. So that's one phase of it. But then once a person enters heaven, then it says that they study Torah, and it seems like that Torah that they study at that stage, they have new novelties in Torah because I don't know exactly why. But those new novelties are the ones that the tzaddikim are excited to listen to because those are those are the brand new innovations in Torah.
Wait, the tzaddikim are the righteous people are listening to it, or or
and
they're
the
making
angels,
it?
both.
They're making it.
Well, no, there's the ones that are already in heaven are waiting for the new tzaddikim to come to heaven to teach new Torah.
That's a simple meaning, though.
That's the simple meaning, but I'm saying even the deeper meaning is something like that. Is that the tzaddikim, whether in heaven because they're already seemingly dead in this world, or they're in heaven because they already entered heaven in their own journey, right? Like, let's say you go to some tzaddik or some rebbe somewhere, and he's just beaming with light, and he's already entered heaven a long time ago. But he isn't necessarily coming up with the types of... he might still be coming up with new ideas in Torah, but it might not be of the same quality or the same level of insight as the person who's just recently entering heaven. So if I'm understanding it correctly, again, I could be completely off here. But if I'm understanding it correctly, it's when the new tzaddikim enter heaven, they come with this new layer of Torah, and the tzaddikim that are in heaven, whether they're, they already died in this physical world or they're in heaven and they're still alive in this physical world, either way, they're excited for this new level of Torah that's being spoken about.
So certainly the righteous people, even in this world, are listening to the words of Torah, even the
so.
Torah that's in the heavens.
The new Torah that's in the
Torah's
heaven. Yeah, I think so.
And the angels.
The angels play a role there too. I don't know exactly what, but it seems like the angels do want to listen to the Torah that's being spoken. Because in Kabbalah, again, I'm not proficient in these ideas, but in Kabbalah, the angels are rooted in a lower level of the system than the humans are. So human souls come from a deeper place than the angels. So the access of Torah and insights, which is really insights about the nature of reality, those new ideas that are coming to light, that the humans are the ones digging through and finding, the angels don't have access to. So even if they might be more spiritually advanced, or they might be more powerful or access, but they don't actually have access to the amount of knowledge about the Creator and about reality. And so they listen to the sages studying Torah.
Interesting. Do you happen to remember the source that you were reading that, or no?
There's a few sources. There's Evan Shlema, that's the Vilna Gaons, and he goes into various parts of the journey of the dead, and that's one part that he was talking about there, if I remember correctly. The idea of the angels being rooted from a lower part of the system, I heard it from my teacher. I think he was quoting Eitz Chaim, but I'm not sure.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that part about the angels being lower, I saw in the Rabbi Rashab in like Samach Vav, I think he says that it's quoting something, which is probably quoting something else, but it says like with the word of Hashem the heavens were made, and with the breath of His mouth all of their inhabitants. So the inhabitants of the heavens are the angels in the spiritual sense. But then, so the angels made with the breath of His mouth, even though by person it also says He breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life. Mm-hmm. But there's a difference between the breath of His mouth that was by the angels and the breath of His mouth that's by Adam. Because by Adam it says he was like blowing from his inner essence to give the soul of the first person. But the angels, it was created like as if it's just like regular, like breathing regular. I don't even think the angels were like necessarily with speech, because it says the heavens were made with speech, but the angels just the breath of His mouth, so it's related to that. The angels, I forgot all the details, but
yeah, I guess we would have to learn it inside to uncover all the details there. That's cool.
Yeah, interesting. And there's like some also discourses from the Rebbe about the angels listening to your voices. I think it's from the book of Proverbs, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. There's a verse that says like, friends listen to your voice, and the friends refers to angels, because people could have jealousy in between them, but angels don't have any jealousy.
Well, questionable.
Is it?
Well, that the angels are jealous of humans? Yeah, I think they are.
Yeah? Are they jealous of each other also?
Oh, of each other. I don't know if they have that capacity.
Yeah, it's debatable. I mean, there's some verses. I mean, they talked about like the angel of Gabriel and the angel of Michael, like having war and stuff, but they also make peace. But there's also some mimers of the discourses of the Rebbe that talks from the quotes from the Gemara that talks about when Moses went up to Mount Sinai, says like he entered the heavens in the physical world, which is similar to what you were talking about the righteous people. When we learn Torah, it's like we're going that level to Moshe. But when the cloud was on Mount Sinai, Moshe was like entering the heavens, and then like he had like a debate like with the angels, essentially, where the angels were saying like, you're trying to come get the Torah into the physical world, but we want the Torah. The Torah is such a precious gift. You should give your glory onto the heavens. You heard about this a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, familiar with, because that's from the Midrash, no, and it's used as a basis of a lot of talks.
Yeah, it's from the Midrash and parts of the Talmud.
Oh, there you go.
The Gemara and Shabbos, I believe, is the source. But yeah, so there's a lot of different questions of what exactly they were asking, because they were asking for the Torah in a spiritual way, but Moshe wanted it in a physical way. But then Moshe's response to the angel, well, after the angels like gave this whole argument, there was like a whole like rap battle or like a court case. Then Hashem, the Creator, told Moses, okay, so the angels made their claim, so now Moses, you give your response, basically. Right. And Moses told the angels like, oh, you're telling me that you guys need the Torah, but do you guys have jealousy between yourselves? And then the Torah says, don't be jealous.
Right.
So it's like and then it says like, the Torah says to honor your parents, but the angels don't have any parents, and it's like so that was one thing which is coming up, because the giving of the Torah
Yeah,
It's coming up in a couple of weeks. So
eventually. Yeah, it's always coming up. Interesting. That's cool. I think we may have spoken about this once.
did we?
Yeah. We need to tell the producer to not switch too much.
Oh, okay. I'll tell the producer maybe.
Can I spill the secret?
You could spill it if you want.
Yaakov here is switching at the same time, so if he gets distracted, you got to give him some grace.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, there's something that came to mind when you mentioned about the angels listening to the voice, but I can't.
Well, maybe
exactly
we'll come
remember
back
what it
to
was.
it.
Oh, okay.
Remember it.
I mean, the Rebbe's birthday is coming up on the 11th day of Nisan, and he gave this intense discourse on his birthday a long time in, I think, 1971.
Which one of his discourses are not so intense?
None of them. They're all intense. But have you ever learned the discourse that talked about like Biomash Teasar on the 11th day? It's kind of I mean, sometimes people learn it. So it's kind of an intense discourse. I don't know if you're
Go
familiar.
for it. I don't know if I remember it.
It talked about well, it talks about a lot of things essentially, but essentially the main point was that it was analyzing this like analogy of like what makes like the Jewish people, so to speak, special as opposed to like idolatrous, the idea of idolatry.
Yeah.
Because it says like, imagine you see like a king coming into like a city, and the king has like a lot of important officials, officers, and it uses like different words, different kinds of officers, and then it says like different people are like watching this whole ensemble of like the king and his royal officials, and one guy's like, oh, if I had like one choice of who I would like pick for myself, whatever that means, I guess to pick for himself to be a leader of, or to be a student of, or something, or doesn't say exactly what it means, but
It's the king. It's the king that's asking.
no, that the king and like his entourage is walking through this place where other people are watching, and then other people that are watching are like saying amongst themselves, like, "Oh, I want like this esteemed official," and then another person says, "Oh, I want this other general." And then it says there was one wise person there that said, "Oh, I only want the king himself," which I mean seems pretty obvious. I mean, why wouldn't what?
Well, I don't think anyone realizes that they can have the king.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The other people thought like the king is too much. So, but the one wise guy's like, oh, I'm like, he's so smart. Oh, I actually want the king. So it talks about how like, getting back to like the idea of the angels, that it says that like everything in the world comes to us through the angels. Like the angels don't have any free choice of their own. It's only like Hashem directing everything. But one of the ways that Hashem directs like the spiritual energy in the world is like through the planets, the stars, and the angels. So it says like the idolaters, they would think that the angels are like, well, there's a few things they would think. One thing they would think is that they would think that they would miss the fact that Hashem, that the creator is the one directing the world. They would think that they realize also that there's some kind of spiritual energy coming from the stars and from the angels. So that part is true, but then they miss out on the part that that energy is actually from Hashem. So because they missed out on that, then they want to choose for themselves the officials of the king, which is like the angels, in order to have like more physicality, because they think that through worshiping these stars and these angels, then they would like have more of.
So it's a self-service thing. They're essentially identifying the ways by which they can get more out of creation, and so they're confusing the source of the whatever it is that they're trying to get with the angels that are.
Yeah, that's the ultimate conclusion. That in the middle, I mean, that's one of the main ultimate conclusions. That, but one of the things that it thought you might think is that the wise person realized that, oh, it's only coming through the king. So obviously, if it comes to the king, then you could get more also, like because the king could give more than anyone else. But that was also kind of like half and half. But I mean, the main idea was that the idea of the one wise person who chose the king, it's essentially like what you said. Like the other people only want to get more stuff from them, but the other person just wants the king himself. Like it says, the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad, used to say very often. He says that he doesn't want the Garden of Eden, which refers to the afterlife of souls, where the righteous people go, which has very intense revelations of Hashem's light. And he also doesn't even want the world to come, which is after the resurrection of the dead, which is, I mean, not that he doesn't want it, but it's like in terms of the context, it's like I don't want your Garden of Eden, I don't want your world to come, even after the resurrection of the dead, which is infinitely greater than the afterlife of the souls. Because it says people who are in the afterlife, the world of souls, for thousands of years, like Moses, Abraham, every day, 3 times a day, they ascend to incomparably greater levels. And that happens 3 times a day. So after 3,000 plus years, they've already ascended to like the highest levels of this afterlife of the world of souls. And nevertheless, we know that when the Messiah comes, all of these souls will come back down into the physical bodies. And it's not going to be like a bad thing. It's like, because if it was like, if they were going down in their level by coming into physical bodies, then what's the point? So it must be that coming into physical bodies is incomparably greater than all the revelations that they've received in the world to come for thousands of years. So the Alter says, oh, I don't want your Garden of Eden. I don't want your world to come. I only want you alone. Zich allein in Yiddish. So it's like if anyone could say like, oh, I don't want this, I don't want that. But the Alter Rebbe actually knew what the other levels were. Like you're saying, a righteous person could be like receiving like the world to come in their own lifetime. So the Alter Rebbe actually knew what the other things were, but he was still able to say that he didn't want it. He only wants Hashem himself, which is
yeah, growing up Chabad, I feel like I heard that story maybe 1,000 times.
That's it?
Maybe more. And there's a few things. First of all, you started to talk about the angels and the planets.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of one of the earlier discussions that we had. Or I think that was my first I think it was my first reintroduction to Awtsmoos once I got back here this time.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to be reintroduced.
I pinpointed what it is. I think I even tweeted about it. And there's such a certainty. Like sometimes people are living in the Helm, in the matrix, so to speak, right? Like you're just going through your day-to-day grind.
The concealment.
You're going through your day-to-day grind and you just don't think about deeper things. And sometimes it's even too much to think about deeper things. But and there is Kabbalah about that as well. Like in the Eitz Chaim, it talks about, I'm pretty sure, at least my teacher said this, that when people hear things that their souls aren't ready for, then it shatters them a little bit and they tune out, and it's a safety mechanism. But there's also a time where you meet someone or you learn something and and things are taken so seriously and literally that it transfers you into being in that state of being. So for example, when we're studying the Rambam and the Rambam's talking about the orbits or the spheres.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after. Yeah.
Okay, so anyhow, so we'll get into, I guess, a little bit into that, but just the description of it and thinking about that for a second, not in a theoretical way, but in a very grounded, real way, where if I think right now we're inside a building and we're surrounded by these spheres, and these spheres are intelligent beings, if you actually accept that, and then you go, okay, and we're the center of the universe instead of it being a solar system, we're in this. If you actually allow yourself to fully believe that reality, then first of all, it gives you such a sense of security because you're in God's very well managed system. But it's also like a little miniature redemption right there. I think that's when I started to get the Awtsmoos, feeling, which I associate with that redemption feel, the redemption feeling.
Yeah, I mean, the viewers might be curious. You're saying the Earth is surrounded by spheres that are intelligent.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to get into that right now, we can. It just made me think of that. I guess there was one other thing. Yeah, we can get into it. The Rambam says, and we were learning this in the Rambam, but did it come up in one of the Maimarim that we learned also?
It's in Maimarim.
No, that we were learning recently. Did it come up or no? Or you just brought it up now with the Yudolf Nissen?
Yeah, we brought it up now. It's in the discourse of Rabbi's birthday. He mentions, I don't know if he mentions the spheres, but he mentions the planets and the angels. So it's all related though.
Got it. I actually, it's a very good meditation if you want to meditate before davening, before praying. And then which I think you're supposed to. And then that allows you to kind of think about the grandness of what you're facing. And then that allows you to elevate your prayer. So this is a very good meditation to do. So what were we studying? Maybe you give us the brief synopsis of it. And then we were trying to reinterpret it. Because usually, I think when we study it, it's either given with an apologetic kind of way of saying it, like, oh, this is what they used to think. This was the Aristotelian or the ancient model that they had, and since then it's changed. That's one approach. Another approach is some sort of creative reinterpretation. For example, instead of thinking them as spheres, like these glass spheres, this is what I said. I was like, oh, maybe these are orbits. So the moon is in an orbit, and you can call that a sphere.
Yeah, maybe we should give some context so the people are like listening for the first time, like, what is this guy even talking about?
Yeah, all right, go.
Go ahead. Want to say anything?
Give the context.
You wanna
I'm
start?
happy to give the context, sure.
You go back and forth. We'll both give it. Yeah.
All right, great. And I read, there's always hashgacha when you're in hashgacha land.
What is this?
Divine providence, synchronicity.
Synchronicity.
When you're in the synchronicity space, it follows you, which relies on dveikus. It relies on connecting yourself to God, and then you see more of it. So, and I think it's a good thing to also tell people, because then it inspires faith, and then they get to experience it too. It's like it's viral, you know.
Yeah.
So anyhow, but we learned it, and then it also came up again in another context. I was reading about it, but
So what is it?
essentially, the Rambam, if I remember correctly, because if I remember correctly, the Rambam begins his introduction to the Torah. He created a full composite of the oral Torah.
What is oral Torah?
Good
I thought there's
question.
only one Torah, no?
Okay, good question. Yeah. So as most people know, Judaism, the Jews follow the Talmud, and the people on the internet don't like it.
Not yet. They will after watching this
They
video.
will, once they understand it. So essentially, the Torah was given, and I'm not the guy to tell everyone how this works, but the Torah is the written Torah,
Yeah.
and it's also a bunch of laws that surround that, and it's in the Mishnah and the Talmud. I don't really want to go into all this. I feel like everyone.
Not everyone knows it. No, it's a new
Okay.
thing. It's
Anyhow,
new.
they could Google it and watch other people's videos about this.
There's no other videos about it. We're the only ones.
Okay,
They're depending on us for their entire life.
nice.
So we are everything.
I guess I would rather start backwards. Start backwards. Right now, today, if you go to a Jewish school, or if you're an Orthodox Jew, or if you're starting to become more practicing, the book that they give you for the law is not the Talmud. You'll study the Talmud because it's something you're supposed to study, but the book that they'll give you is the Shulchan Aruch. It's like a code of
set table, right?
set table. Yeah, it's a code of laws, just one after another. It starts from the morning when you wake up, and then you go through more and more throughout the day, and the bathroom, and then it goes into the more complex ones that you don't usually, need to know about. The laws of slaughtering, the laws of selling and loaning, all this detailed laws. It's almost like the whatever the modern law book is.
I have no idea.
The Constitution and all of its associated laws. Okay, so that's the way most people study Judaism today, meaning if you want to know what to do.
Yeah.
Now, even within that, you have to understand the history of those books, because those books didn't know exist, and the ones that one group studies is really different than the group that another group studies, because different groups follow different rabbis who compiled their own versions of it, and each one has a reason why they compiled their version differently.
I hear you.
Okay, so there's different ones of these law books. Now, most of the law books are based off of earlier law books that were compiled to try to simplify all the law. So instead of you individually need to go through the Talmud, which has different opinions, and you need to know which one we go by. And the Talmud itself is a long, elaborate, amongst other things, elaborate dialogue among sages trying to understand what the ruling is in the Mishnah, which is an earlier law book. And the Mishnah itself obviously needs to be based on the written Torah. So there's this whole evolution, and most people don't have the patience or knowledge or, can't handle all of that. And so there's just a set law book that you go by, and there's different versions of it. Okay, that's the long story short.
Cool.
But the reason why I bring this up is because the Rambam has his version that he made a very long time ago, before the Shulchan Aruch. And
that's cool.
And what I found very interesting about the Rambam is that, unlike the modern ones today that start off with the morning, like get up like a lion and do what you got to do. That's how the new ones start. His started very differently. His start with, what is God? What is the world? What is the Torah? Why should you care about any of this stuff? How does all this stuff work? How to be a healthy person? How to find balance in your life? That's how he starts off. Doing tshuva, getting to the world to come, the different delights that it has, why you should want to do this, etc. So I find it so much more compelling, his approach to giving over the law, as opposed to a bunch of laws starting with the morning, don't be lazy. It's let me tell you about the angels. Let me tell you about the planet. Where you're a person, you exist in this world. Let me tell you how this all works. And then from there, he encourages you to, do tshuva and connect to God. And the purpose of the mitzvahs is to connect to God. Anyhow.
Yeah, it seems like Rambam wrote his book because this is like essentially what teachers were supposed to be teaching their students the whole time, but it wasn't always like written down. Like if like there's a newborn child that's just born, the parents tell them, "Oh, by the way, there's a creator." In case you didn't know, like there's like all the extra stuff that people just happen to know, and then the Rambam was just writing it down. It seems.
It could very well be. And I think it definitely, I don't know what, there's billions of people in the world. I don't know what kind of relationships people have with their parents and their educators. But if people had the type of relationship where the Rambam was your dad and this is your introduction to the world, I think the world would be a much better place.
Well, the Rambam is maybe.
Yeah, he is all of our fathers. Okay, great.
So anyway, so the Rambam, yeah. So basically, what we're saying is that, I mean, when Moses got the Torah from Mount Sinai, he got the written Torah scroll that we see in synagogues all the time. The same Torah scroll that we have now. It's the same Torah scroll that Moses wrote, word for word. And by the way, today's Rambam is actually talking about the laws of how to write a Torah, which is pretty intense. So it's cool that we're talking about it now. He talks about like different kinds of ink that you have to use and different kinds of parchment. So these are the same laws of how to write a Torah scroll Moshe himself was doing under the instruction of the Creator. The Creator told him how to make a Torah scroll, what parchment to use, how to make the ink. And then the Creator literally told him every single word to write down, word for word, exactly. And the Rambam says, Maimonides says, if someone thinks that even one word of the Torah that we have is not what Moshe wrote, then, I mean, that person would be a heretic. But nowadays, people don't actually know any better, so it doesn't really count for modern day people. But like ancient people, they would thought that.
I just have to interject. See, this is an example of what I'm talking about, where these things you may have heard, you may technically believe, but it's rare to come across someone who embodies a certainty, or at least expresses a certainty in this fact. And if you embrace that certainty and you enter into its metaphorical tent, it's redemptive. It's like God actually told Moses to write. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I always am living with doubt and uncertainty, not necessarily about these specific things, but just in general about what to do in life and worries and anxieties and all the things that you have to worry about. But when you hear something that's said over with such certainty, it's very powerful. I actually personally believe that that's one of the reasons why the Rambam says these things to begin with, because I can't say what I want to say.
You could say it if you wanted to.
Well, there's a certain, the Baal Shem Tov says, and I'm sure it has other sources for it, I just happen to know it from the Baal Shem Tov, and I think it's in a Hayom Yom as well, that wherever your mind is, that's where you are. Like, reality is the reality that you're living in. So if you're choosing to live in a reality of doubt, then you're living in a reality of doubt. If you're choosing to live in a reality of certainty, then reality is the reality of certainty. So, I thought about this in a funny context just actually earlier today, because we're downstairs in 770 and there's people dancing around, with a flag, and the Mashiach's here already, and waiting for the Rebbe to physically walk by, and it's really grown on me. It would be sad to me if at some point that stopped, because it's an embodiment of such a certainty in the redemption, especially when you study the material and you could associate the redemption with a delightful sensation. Suddenly there's actual joy, and you look at and now on a random Wednesday night, there are people dancing and celebrating something that has so much spiritual depth to it. So to by extension, what you're saying about the Rambam saying about Moshe writing the Sefer Torah, and it's exactly it. There are all sorts of academics that will come in and start challenging it, and then you can get into an argument and it can go on forever. But to me, that misses the point. What the Rambam is giving over is a gift, and the gift is the gift of certainty and the knowledge of God. And if you enter into that, then you are one with God. Then you are receiving the Torah from God right now, which of course is a lot of the Chabad philosophy is trying to give over.
Yeah, definitely receiving the Torah. Hashem's giving the Torah anew every day. I mean, we say in the blessings when we wake up, it says Hashem is one who gives the Torah. Not that he just gave it, but it says the commentary is that the time when the Creator revealed himself at Mount Sinai, when millions of people were gathered around Mount Sinai with fire and millions of angels, and the Creator's voice exploding from all directions that the whole world could hear. When the Creator told them, like, "Oh, I am the Awtsmoos who took you out of Egypt," etc. paraphrasing.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so when that happened, it says that was not only was it beyond space because they heard it from all directions, but space and time are interconnected. So since it was beyond space, it's also beyond time, and therefore that moment that it happened, it says, is really happening in all moments constantly. And in order to connect with that moment that's happening constantly, that's through learning the Torah. But when we learn the Torah now, then it's like we're connecting with that moment that the Creator revealed Himself to the world. And it says when someone is learning Torah, then it's like as if they're actually standing at Mount Sinai, and it's as if the Creator is speaking through them, just like the Creator speaks words of Torah through Moshe, etc. So yeah, I mean that's why the Torah will never be given again. That's why we know there's only one Torah forever, because the time that it was given once includes all the different time, all the past, present, and future, such that it's never possible